Today on Artifactually Speaking, I want to talk about something that isn't there. I'm Dr. Brad Hafford, archaeologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm here at the ancient city of Nimrud in northern Iraq. I've got the Nimrud ziggurat in the background, and admittedly it's not as impressive as the Ur ziggurat. It used to be much taller, but ISIS came through with bulldozers and started mowing it down. Apparently they thought there was something valuable inside. Well, today I'm going to talk about, as I said in the intro, something that's not there, but I want to show the evidence of how we know that it was there, and how we can hopefully completely reconstruct it and understand it. What I'm going to talk about is the gate, or at least a particular gate, that we are currently excavating. So we've got the walls that lead up to it. That's one of the things that we know. It's a doorway. It's a big doorway, about 3 meters wide. But we've also got the gate sockets, so we know that there was a giant post that rotated and that held the door. We've got more than that though, and the main thing that I want to show now are door nails. So what we're getting a whole lot of as we excavate are these copper or bronze, most likely. We haven't tested, but I'm sure it's got some bronze, some tin in it, so it makes it bronze. These are nails that we're finding a lot of. We've got at least 50 so far from the soil all around. These nails often have these lines in them which appear to be intentional, as if that would help them to expand when they were in the wood, sort of like a molly bolt. And they have a lot of bronze disease, but the interior is still largely real copper. Well, these door nails and the other copper pieces that we find, fastenings in a way, they tell us that the door was here. There are some inscriptions too that tell us that this temple, the temple of Ishtar Sharat Nefi, was built with cedar and with alabaster, or a stone that we call Mosul marble, and with some gold plating even over some of the cedar beams. So we know that they used a lot of cedar here, and it's a big difference between the south and the north. Here in the north there's better access to larger trees, to the cedar forests in the Lebanon, so they're bringing a lot more big beams. They can span larger areas, and they can make these gigantic gateway doors. So there were planks of cedar, and they had to be fastened together, and they did that by putting copper bands along them and then nailing them in. Now we don't have a pointed end. It's almost always flat when we have them, so we think they probably drilled a little bit into the wood and then hammered it in there through the copper bands. We don't know how many bands there were, but there are similar known gateways. There's one at Balawat that shows a lot of these bands, and those are very decorative bands. Well, the pieces that we find are fragmentary, but some of them are preserved well enough that we can see some decorative elements. It's usually curvilinear designs. They're hammered from the back. It's called repoussé design. And yet we do have two pieces that have some figures advancing along, so it showed a figural scene at least on one of these bands. So there's a lot of really good evidence. We know how wide the doors were because the gateway, the two gate sockets, are about 3 meters apart. Each door must have been 1.5 meters in width, probably about 4 meters tall, maybe even more. We can't absolutely know that, but we think we can possibly figure it out. There's a door sill of stone against which the door closed, and then there's a hole in the pavement where they would put a post down to secure it. There was probably another bigger post in between the doors to make sure that that could be locked shut. So a very impressive monumental gateway. We expect that there's going to be protective sculptures outside of it. Pretty much every gateway into this building had lamassu or lions. The lamassu are usually winged bulls. There are also some lions that guarded the cella to Ishtar. That was her sacred animal. She's often shown standing on a lion. So we do expect to find more. We're just not there yet. We have a few of the nail heads that actually come in and still have some of the surrounding copper as well. So this is more evidence that they were actually hammered in. When we first found some of the copper pieces, we wondered, were there a bunch of copper vessels here? Because a bowl might make this thin copper sheeting, and sometimes those are decorated. But the fact that we're in a gateway area, and that we have nails, and that we have some nails going actually through the sheeting, it's pretty certain that these were door bands, and that there must have been a lot of them. And they often have a lot of burning evidence, because the door burned. We know the whole building was burned in 612 BCE by the Medes. And they burned so hot that there's often charcoal sort of fused into it. And some of these pieces fuse onto the stone flooring. So you get this green staining. And it almost looked like painting at first when I saw it, because there would be black and green. And I thought I saw like an eye image, but it's just the way that the burning happened against that floor. I'm really interested in this, and I feel now like, am I rejoicing in the fact it burned? No, and that was probably a terrible event, but the fact that it burned and fell in place gives us an opportunity to try to reconstruct what it was like. And that's what archaeology is all about. Well, I hope you enjoyed exploring these nails and copper bands with me in order to imagine and reconstruct in our minds the big gateway that led into this sacred temple. Join me again next time on Artifactually Speaking.